Hey, everybody. Today on the Agent Excel podcast, we have probably one of the coolest guests we're ever going to have on the show. It's my wife, Brittini Bowers. What's up, Britt?
Hi, I can't believe this is my first time on.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. We are actually in a hotel room in Dallas, Texas right now. We got on a plane yesterday to come out here to an event where realtors are at, and we're going to learn how to grow our business and our companies.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And I think that's such a great topic for today too. I know we get asked, why we go to so many events and masterminds and things like that. And I think, our answer could probably help a lot of agents out there.
Yeah, so I've been going to events. I've been doing real estate for 17 years, and I get the same thing. I feel like people are always like, "What do you learn when you go to those events?" Or they have like local events that they go to, and those are cool as well. But I've always just been one that you've got to get on a plane and go learn from people. I mean, there's so many agents around the country that are doing this business at such a high level, and when you get to these conventions or events, you sometimes are hearing from people who are doing like 800, 1,000 homes a year. And, I'm sitting here sometimes like trying to figure out how to grow our company. And you start hearing these people and they're talking about their challenges of like, oh, I'm trying to get to 700 to 800 units a year. And you're like, whoa, we're like not even in the same like space. So I think it's just like getting around people that are like bigger than you can really like make your mind just open that, the problems that we're having currently like don't have to be really that big if you think of like other people and what they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, so I've been going to events like I remember going to like the Keller Williams events, like the masterminds, like I think they called them family reunions and mega camps.
Mhm.
Those were some of and when I got in the business, I was 22, and those were some of the like most influential. I still talk to this day about some of those events that I went to at mega camp, just from like Gary Keller talking on stage and getting like panels up there and talking about how they get repeat and referral business. I remember coming home and like they almost like they energize me in a way. And that's sometimes what you need. You sometimes need like energy and sometimes you need like tactical.
Mhm.
And so like there I always came home and I was energized. I was like, oh, I want to do more business. But then I also learned a lot of tactics that I still like to this day implement. So from family reunions to mega camps to, always going to like different local things that we have. But yeah, we've actually, how many events have we went to probably this year?
I want to say probably about 7 or 8 different events between like national conferences and then also smaller mastermind groups. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't really get is yes, like we're not at that 800 to 1,000 unit a year level, but I think what's really cool about going to events like these and talking to people that do a higher production than you is that there's actually a lot of similarities between a smaller business and a larger business. And even though you might not be at that level, you can still learn so many good takeaways on how they perform and what systems they use that you can implement at whatever level that you're at currently.
Yeah, like I remember we were at a lunch and learn, I think it was probably about 2 weeks ago. And it was probably 40 people, more local. I think everybody was probably local at that event. And we were talking about like how to do a better listing presentation in today's market where people are, they are sometimes looking for like cash offers and
Mhm.
or like they possibly want to flip their own house. So it was like really interesting, like being in there. Like I had been coming from the perspective of one way of doing business and going there and just hearing somebody else's opinion and how they conduct their business and their listing appointments. I walked away and it was like, that's going to be now the way that I do my listing presentation.
Yeah.
And so when I left there, I was like, I would have never have known how to do this. And it was just a 2 hour lunch and learn.
Right.
And then also I was on a Zoom. I think it was last week I was on a Zoom call. It was like a mastermind that we do. It was probably about 70, 80 people. And it was people from all over the country. And we talked about like how to get more listings with like Google.
Mhm.
And so just sitting there, you're like, whoa, like I'm actually like I'm starting to implement that now where I really think I'm gonna look back probably in the next year and be like, okay, we probably got 12 pieces of business. We'll probably get 12 listings from that a year on how we're gonna implement it.
Mhm.
And once again, I mean, when they talked about it, I was thinking, I mean, yeah, sure, I should have known that. But until you like you almost like you see the person who talks about it and then you look at him, you're like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And you just realize you're like, okay, like if they can do it, I can do it. And sometimes all you need is that spark of like, if you can do it, I can do it.
Right. A little bit of confidence goes a long way.
Yeah.
And I think also, going to these masterminds too, especially real estate is just such an evolving job. Like our job changes all the time. Our market changes all the time. So if you're stuck learning something that you learned 3, 4 years ago and doing the same thing over and over, I mean, that's why you'll get stuck in a rut and you can get out of your production level that you're currently at because you're not changing when the market changes. And I've talked to several realtors that have been realtors for 25 plus years. And it's just funny because sometimes they're like, oh, this is the way I do it. And I'm like, I know, but things are changing. Like you have to change a little bit with the market, or I think you could get stuck. And I think if you're not putting yourself in the right rooms with the right people who are moving and shaking in the industry, I think it's very easy to just kind of rest on your knowledge that you have. And that's where your growth is stunted because you're just using what you've always used.
Yeah. I've had many people over the last probably 2 months reach out to me, realtors, and they've talked about like, I don't even know how to really like do a listing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, and they've sometimes, some of them have been in the business for a while, but it's almost like they got so just numb to how they were doing listings for 2 years. It was
Mm-hmm.
just list it for any price, sell it for any price, and that worked. So it's like sometimes it's just like brushing off some of the old tools that you used to use, and some of these agents have not been in the business forever.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is all they've seen is the last 2 and 3 years, and so they're just really trying to like figure out how do we implement new tactics. But I think the point of that is no matter where you're at, if you just make a commitment like in our overall like my business plan is hey we got to get to events so we just go like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter how much production there is. It doesn't matter if the market's changing or not. I think if you just like make that a part of your business model is I probably need to get in rooms with other agents that are intelligent every 60 days and get in front of them and figure out how to learn from them. Then you almost feel like you're always the cutting edge because you're just every 45 to 60 days you're in a group of people and you're learning new things, and that's just how you keep growing
Mm-hmm.
is by just hearing what other people are doing and just keep implementing.
Yeah, I think being part of the conversation and coming into real time solutions with those people too is such a great attribute of those types of meetings. I mean, you get things that you're just not going to get anywhere else. There's no book you can read or video you can watch, and rather than just coming together with a group of people that are in the same industry as you and just learning from each other. And I think, we were talking on the plane about, why do we think people don't go to events like that? And
Mm-hmm.
I think we came up with a few reasons. One could be finances for sure. Like plane, hotel, all that can be expensive, but there's so many great local events. And I wouldn't say that one event that you have to fly to versus one in your local market isn't going to be better or worse. Like I think you can gain so much knowledge from each of them. And then I think a lot of people too are not confident in their production. Maybe they, do 20 to 30 homes a year. They don't feel like they could be in those rooms with people that do 100, 200, 800 units a year. And I just have to say, like, that's how you get there. Like, you don't get there by hanging out with people that do the same production as you, just because you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. And I think as you put yourself in rooms with people who do larger scale, I mean, that's where you kind of grow and expand your own knowledge to where you can do the same thing.
And if it is finances, I can always understand that. So I'll never argue that with
Oh,
people's
absolutely.
finances. Could they find the money somewhere that they're spending somewhere else? Sure. If they really truly looked at this like an investment. Also, what I would say on that is I I think a lot of us that go to these events where we might get on a plane and travel, we do come back. And when
Mm-hmm.
we come back, like that is your local meetup.
Yep.
So like the knowledge that we get usually is the knowledge that we're sharing in some of these lunch and learns, these local masterminds
Mm-hmm.
that we're doing. And so I would say like if that is a true valid reason is like the finances, then make sure that you like there's always stepping stones, right?
Right.
So for someone to just say like, oh, well, I can't do any learning this year. Okay, well, let's say it's finances. Like, okay, well, like you probably can get to the one, that's 5 miles away.
Right.
And you could probably go to that one that's actually free, and you're probably learning from the people that went to these events. And then you just kind of scale that. And then as you go to those and you keep going to those for a year, then you're doing more production.
Mm-hmm.
As you do more production, you're usually making more money. Then you start getting on the planes. Then now you're that person. I would, kind of challenge people because I've seen it is it's always and I've seen this from a lot of agents that I invite to come to some lunch and learn things like that. And this is totally fine, but like they'll just be like, oh, I'm busy that day, or like, oh, I've got an inspection that day.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is how some of the people who are in these rooms, like who have flown here, I mean, some of us have 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 pendings going on right now. So it's almost as if like in our business DNA, this is just as important as our inspection, our appraisal. Because like sometimes I'll have people that are like, oh, you want to come to an event? And they're like, yeah. And then the day before, like, oh, I've got an inspection at that time,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm like, yeah, I've got 3-2 that day. You know, like you can still figure out ways, like if that's an important thing to you, like you can figure out how to structure your business around those types of events.
Right.
I think it's like you truly knowing like that is important. So if you
Mm-hmm.
think that that's like really, really important, you'll get to it.
Right.
Um,
I agree with that. I think you definitely have to prioritize that and make sure that that's part of your plan, right? Learning has to be part of your business plan. If you're not learning, you're just not growing.
yeah. And so what do you think, what are some other reasons that you think people don't like
I
go to
think it
events?
maybe just confidence. I feel like some people have a different idea of what the dynamic is like when you get in a room like that or go to a mastermind or lunch and learn, like they're going to make you speak or something. And I'll tell you, like, there's so many where like you
I
don't
ain't
have to
speaking.
say, yeah, Chris is one of them. He actually is very good at speaking, but he, in his head, he feels like he doesn't like to, but then once it gets going, it's like, okay, you be quiet now.
Right.
But I think a lot of people think they're going to have to speak. Oh my God. I think it comes down to confidence, really. Is like, what if I have nothing to bring to the table? And I'm telling you, you do have something to bring to the table. Everybody does. The reason why your clients chose you is because you have something that you bring to the table. And I think sharing that, even if it's on a smaller scale, can help somebody in the room. So, I find that I learn from every type of agent. It doesn't really matter, and sometimes you learn what not to do, right? But I still think at the end of the day, you can learn from anybody. You just have to be, open to receiving that.
Everybody needs to realize they have something to bring to the table.
Yeah.
You know, if let's say you did 2 transactions this year, there's somebody out there who just got their real estate license and does not know how to do 2 transactions,
Mm-hmm.
and you can help them. If you have never did a transaction and you have your real estate license, there's somebody out there that they want to get their real estate license. I
Yeah.
kind of go back to like the basics on that is you can usually help the person that you once were.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that and I'm saying like, are there some people out there that are selling tons of real estate and I have probably not a lot of value to them? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But wherever you're at right now, you were 6 months, a year, 2 years ago, somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the person that you can help. So I think if you always just wake up in the day and think of like, what were my challenges a year ago that I've gotten better at?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that other person out there that now is your former version. And
Mm-hmm.
if you just wake up every day thinking, hey, I need to be a student and a teacher every day,
Mm-hmm.
like the world just works better as far as business.
Yeah.
You
And I
know, I,
think,
I wake up and I'm like, hey, I've got to learn today from somebody on how to do more production. And then I put on my hat where I'm like, I also have to be a teacher. There's somebody out there that's trying to get to my production.
mm-hmm.
And so if I just wake up every day and hey, I got to teach somebody and then I've got to go learn from somebody. And then one would say, well, why does that person have any benefit in teaching me? Because that person usually is the same mentality of, I've got to teach somebody today and I've got to learn from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get in the right circles of people that realize like their currency is, I got to be a teacher today and a student,
Mm-hmm.
then like that's how everybody levels up.
Yeah. And I think another point that just kind of came to my head was there are some times where you go to masterminds and they're not productive. And I think it's when you're maybe around a group of people that just aren't willing as much to share. They kind of have that scarcity mindset, like there's not enough business to go around. The rooms that we're in, like these people do not care if like you work the same area as them. Like everyone kind of opens up their playbook and is willing to share what works for them and works for what may work for you. And I think that's what's really cool too, that that maybe a year or two ago, like I wouldn't have expected so many people to be like that. But I think it goes back to what, we had originally said, like your clients chose you for a reason, whether it's your personality, your relationship you have with them. So there's always going to be people that, yeah, maybe they're, a better agent than you, but you still have that relationship and you can rise to that level of the other agent by just leveraging their expertise. And then I also think that, when it comes to production, it's just a mindset game. Like it doesn't matter if you're doing 15 to 30 deals or whether you're doing 100 plus. I mean, it's all in your mindset. Like we talk to agents, and there's an avatar of an agent that has this mindset like, oh, I only want to work, I only want to do like my referrals that come my way, or I only want to do like 10 deals a year. And really what that agent is saying to me is that they enjoy their freedom, right? They enjoy their time. And they would actually, I would argue, benefit the most from coming to those meetings, learning how to leverage their time and learning how to leverage other people in their business or other systems so that they can have that precious time with their family and not just say, oh, I only want to work this. Like that's not really what they're saying. They're not saying they want to be involved in every step of the transaction for the 10 deals that come. It's like, no, they actually value their time and their time with their family. So come to these meetings, like we will show you how to leverage yourself.
Yeah, I'd actually argue that an agent doing like 15 to 20 units by themselves could be working more in their business than an agent that's closing 80 and they have some leverage around them.
But how many agents have we met like that have said that to us? Like, oh, I'm not interested in growing my business. I just want to do the couple deals that come this way.
You're right though. Like you look at it and you're saying like, what's the root of that? And the root is exactly that. Typically it's exactly what you said. They're really saying it's not that I don't want to do more production. It's they're saying, and they don't know how to say it, but they're saying, I can't see myself doing any more production with the current way that I'm currently structured.
Yep.
And yeah, so like, yes, if I have to get to 60 inspections, if I have to show 60 buyers on the weekends, if I have to go to 60 of this, if I have to go to 60,
it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Yeah. So like, they're thinking of what they're doing at 12 to 15 deals. And they're saying, if I had to do that and do the same thing that I'm doing now with times 60, I would go insane. Yeah. And so it's saying like, but when you go get around people who are doing this at higher levels, they're going to tell you like going from 20 to 40 deals, it's hire this one person. And then going from 60 deals to 100 deals, hire this one person. And that might not make sense now, but it all does as you keep coming into these rooms and you realize like there's different ways to structure your company.
Right. I could tell them that you could actually probably double your production and do less work.
Yeah.
If you just implemented a few strategies in your business.
Another thing I've noticed with talking to agents is when talking about events, and definitely as we say all this, I don't want anybody to think we're bashing agents anyway. I'm trying to like level up with trying to get people to understand why they should come to these events. But then that's why I wanted to talk about like why I think they're not coming is, a lot of times I think people are saying like, oh, I go to my team's events or my team leaders events or like my brokerage events. And don't get me wrong, those can be great. But those can sometimes be, like I said, sometimes you got to get on a plane and be around people who are from different states, different markets, different ideas. Sometimes that people aren't, trying to teach you something that just like benefits them. But that's something that I have noticed that people are like, oh, I go to events. I go to my team meeting every single week, and you're kind of like, is that the one where like, is that the taser class one more time? Nothing wrong against the taser class going to it 900 times, but there's definitely things that get you business. And I mean, like getting straight tactical, like how do you get more business? And then there's also, I consider like fluff classes. And it's just like, oh, I went to this class, but like really at the end of the day, like, did that really bring any profit to your company? Right. Did you learn a tactic that you were going to walk away with today and actually start implementing and look back in a year and say, oh, I just leveled up. I'm closing 15, 20 more deals because of this tactic. Right.
And I think also, I mean, it's kind of who you talk to at those events. I think more than like the main speaker or a keynote speaker, like exactly in masterminds too, it's like who you talk to, who you connect with. You're going to connect with people that, maybe have similar businesses to yours or similar personalities to you, and you can learn from them. But it really comes down to those conversations that you have with people. Like you can go to a huge event with 6,000 agents and not learn one thing if you don't actually meet and network and talk with people on a deeper level. So, and I find that that's like really what a lot of people want to do when they come to these things. So I think you just, if you are a little bit more shy or maybe a little more introverted, it can definitely be a stretch for you personality wise, but I think it's 100% worth it. And that's actually the reason why you should go to those things, to talk to people.
And I'm definitely the introverted one. So like when we come to these events, I'm not naturally someone who like tries to walk around a corner and see somebody that I know that I didn't know I was going to be having a conversation with. So I can see where people are coming from when they're coming to these events, if they're not like, oh, I don't want to go talk to everybody.
Right.
Also, what I do is, when we go to these events, it's almost just like keeping in the back of my head, like, oh, that person's good at that. That person's good at that. And I find that most of these realtors, they have something about them that's like their secret sauce. Like every one of them has like the specific skill. Like for me, like for you and I, it's like repeat and referral business.
Right.
Like people probably know us that like, that's like what they're really good at. Now, don't get me wrong. Do we get business other ways? Sure. Like that's probably not our like specialty that we would teach a class on.
Right.
So when I go to these events, I try to think of like, I try to just remember like, okay, that person's good at that. That person's good at that. And then you realize like whenever you get to that problem in your business, whether it's now or in a year or 2 or 3, like that's when you think like, oh, this is the problem that I have and I need to solve it. You start thinking you're like, oh, I already know where to go. And you might not even know that person specifically or their phone number, but you probably know somebody at that event that between like 2 people introducing them to you,
right,
that you can get their phone number. It's like, so that's really what you're doing here too. It's like gathering some stuff that you can actually implement right away. And then you're also like learning like who is a player at that certain thing and just keeping that in your memory bank and then deciding at what time, like when you need that problem solved, you're like, oh, okay, that's the person who's going to solve it. Let me get their number and give them a call.
Absolutely. And I think that we've done that several times with lots of people where it's just really nice where you can be like, okay, that they had really good things to say about like the team dynamic, team structure, team training. Like I really want to connect with them. Or, oh, they do this also in their business. Like, we've been having this problem for a while. Like I'd like to give them a call and just be like, hey, what do you do for that? How do you overcome this? Or
Yeah.
is this an objection that you get frequently as well? Like, what do you guys say to that? I think that's just like so powerful to be able to connect with people that do the same thing as you. And I mean, it's amazing how many people I've never once been told, no, we don't share what we do with that. Not
Yeah.
even once. So I think that's just, I think there's something to be said for that.
We've built our business off of me sending the most random text to people.
Yeah.
Like that's just who I am. I'm pretty wired that way. Like I'll send a random text probably every month to somebody, be like, hey, I know you're good. Like I'll reach out to somebody on Facebook, Instagram, text message, whatever, and be like, I know you're good at this. Would you have a conversation with me? And I mean, yeah, you're right. Like very rarely are they ignored. I think people are actually, I think majority of the people who are successful look at how they can help other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a really cool common denominator between successful people. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's naturally in most successful people is they know like giving back is what gets you ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, yeah, you'll rarely find people that are just like, no, I'm not going to share this with you. Now, I think be very cautious when they're super high level,
Mm-hmm.
just taking all their time from them is very, their time is precious. They have a
Right.
family that they're trying to get back to, but it's like if you can say, hey, can I get like 10 minutes of your time? And you're very dialed down with your questions when you're on there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Um, yeah, I just think it's funny too, because I feel like there's so many agents that deal with imposter syndrome. And like, so I feel like when you do ask them a question, they're almost like, what? You want to learn from me?
Sure.
And I honestly feel because I felt that way too, where someone was like, oh, I really liked what you said about, how you structure your team intro training. And I was like, oh, really? Like that
Uh-huh.
thing? Like, okay. But I think it's just kind of cool because I feel like we all kind of deal with that on some level. And I think that's why people are so willing to help too, I think.
I would like to find somebody that I know that doesn't have imposter syndrome. I think a lot of
I
people
think,
have it. I
yeah.
just like, even when we speak sometimes in the mastermind, some people will come up to us afterwards and how they're asking the questions. I'm just like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel this way sometimes about me, but yet I can tell by how they're reacting to us that they have like, they saw something that we said that like inspired them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just looking at it like that seems so normal of how we just run our lives. So yeah, I think it's very easy to have imposter
Mm-hmm.
syndrome. But yeah,
Yeah.
you will notice that in a lot of people.
Oh,
So
totally.
they're usually pretty stoked to actually answer your
Yeah,
questions.
I think people like to
They want
feel
to
like,
help.
yeah, they want to help. So yeah, it's been really fun doing that. But I think I mean, the gist of it is like you put yourself in the right rooms with the right people, right? So you don't put yourself in rooms with people that are, complaining or complacent, honestly. I think
Yeah.
that's probably even worse than complaining.
Well, I'm glad you just brought that up because I mean that's so true. Like how like just think like even if you think of like your family and your friend group, like any realtor right now that's doing real estate, like your family and your friend group, like they almost just don't relate. For example, like some of my best friends, like they don't do real estate. Therefore, it's like you can't go to them usually for like any of like solutions to your problems when it comes to real estate. And like your
Mhm.
family, like they don't usually know how to answer your problems and sometimes they chime in on what they think that you would need to do and
Mhm.
yet like really is that tactically what you would need to do.
Mhm.
So I think like you do just need to get around like you said, like you got to get to a place where you can get questions answered and you can solve your problems and really like grow.
Mhm. And I think you got to be okay with being, the lowest on the totem pole in the room. I mean, as far as like your business, like
Yeah.
we walk into some like masterminds or group meetups and we're like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know if like we're even on the same level as some of these people. And, there's probably four other people in the room thinking the same thing. And I think that's
Right.
just, I think a little humility goes a long way too. So I think it's just, you just get in those rooms and just don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Just get in there, attend, learn. And then I think one of the biggest things that once you leave these events, whether it be a small group luncheon, mastermind, local, not local, I think you really have to think about like your takeaways from that. So, I mean, you can sometimes, I mean, I'm a huge like pen to paper note taker. I love to write. And so for me, I usually have 4 or 5 pages of just like things I want to do in our business that, or someone talked about something and it inspired me and I want to look more into that. But realistically, you can't go through the entire list, right? So you really have to prioritize, okay, Which one can I implement right away, right? That would impact my business. Which one would have the overall most impact to my business? Or which one gives me the most energy, right? Like those ones are always fun to work on too, because they fire you up. And sometimes you need a little boost of energy in your day.
Yeah, I mean you're definitely a note taker. I'm typically not. So I'm just like what I look at these and say whatever was most important would have just been the thing that was on my brain the most.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's just my style. Everyone's got a different style, but that's how I think is like, hey, I'm just gonna like soak this in through my brain. And whenever I want to digest this when I'm done, like the most important thing would have been the thing I was thinking about when I left.
Right.
But yeah, you are right. Like you do usually get 15 or 20 things that you walk
Mm-hmm.
away with and you legitimately think like, oh, if I did that I could get business, if I did that I could get business. And that's almost where like that's almost what you got to solve right there. Is like,
Mm-hmm.
so like the next thing is like first come, that's like solve that, like just come to events.
Mm-hmm.
Then second, it's getting to that place that you're not just the note taker,
Right.
because the note taker actually doesn't get anywhere. The note taker is and I'm not saying that specifically to you, right? Like I'm
Right.
just saying that to me too. Like the person who attends something and just gets all these good ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, those are good ideas, and then they go back home or back to their office, and then nothing actually gets implemented. What you realize is they were almost just like in a motivational speech.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, sometimes you do go to these and you need to be inspired.
Right.
And then sometimes you go to these and you need to be inspired, but then you also need to go back and be tactical. So it's really just trying to figure out like, what do I feel right now is the best thing for me to implement? Now, mine's usually a one or two, and it's usually based around like, what am I already doing that I
Mm-hmm.
can plug this thing in and it makes the most logistical sense.
Right.
Like I could say like, okay, this is already how we're operating. If we just implemented this in, then we'd be able to, get more business. And I think it's also just to know like anything that you usually write down to get more business, these things, there's some logistics to it.
And I want to say too, it's not just to get more business too. Sometimes it's just systems in your business that help make your life easier too.
Yeah.
So it's not always just about upping your production.
Well, that's important to say because I mean, really at the end of the day, there's times I think in life where it's okay to say like I don't want to do more business. Like that's actually could be a cool spot to be in life where you're just like, hey, let's say someone was doing 30 units a year and they love their lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
they love how their company's structured, and they're like, I don't want to do any more business. Then it's like, okay, you could come to these things like you said, and if you could figure out, so now you're saying like that's the only amount of business I want to do, which is fine. So now I think the question would be for me, if I said that's my cap, is how do I get all of this done? If this is how much I'm going to do, how do I get it done the fastest where my clients get the best customer service?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can figure out how to shave off half the time in the year by doing stuff a certain way,
And leveraging yourself.
yeah, it's like, okay, well, if you said, hey, I only want to do 30, then if you could learn techniques to do 30 faster and enjoy your life and have more free time, then that seems also valuable as well. So yes, you're right.
Yeah.
It's not always about just upping production.
Yeah.
It could just be about how do I do the same amount of production and have more free time to spend with my family or friends or travel.
Yeah. And I think, for me, with a long list of notes of stuff I want to accomplish, I think you almost get decision fatigue where it's like, oh my gosh, like, what do I start first? Right. And then you start nothing. So, one of the first like bigger masterminds that we went to, I want to say it was like 2 years ago. Like, we were just blown away by that one. Like, I know you know which one I'm talking about. And we just like left and we were just like, we were so quiet for like the ride home because we were just like, man, like there's so much to think about and so many things we want to do. But one thing I loved was that the host of that mastermind was like, hey, I want you to come up with just one takeaway you're going to go and implement tomorrow. And that was so powerful for me just because, like I said, I'd taken probably 50 something notes, 50 something things I wanted to do in our business. And for us at the time, it was actually like implementing our Google My Business, which again, not important for this conversation, but that was the thing that we were like, we have to do this. This is like the 10th time we've heard this. We have to implement this. And the next day we implemented it. Now, did it finish the next day? No, but like you have to start, right? Yeah. So that to me, like just leaving and being like, okay, not one, not two, not three, just one, right? Just one thing implement. And then it was like a lot easier. It's like, okay, you scratch that off. Like, what else could I implement? And like, what gives me, that's why we talked about earlier, like what gives me the most energy or what would be the most impactful right now? And that's how you decide what to do next. But I think if your biggest problem is you have too many things you want to implement after a mastermind or an event, I think you did the right thing.
Yeah, you succeeded. You got the knowledge you needed. And I think knowledge is what you need, and then implementation is second. I think that's the order. You got to get the knowledge, then figure out how to implement, and then usually good things come from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so that's the show for today. We just wanted to jump on since we were at an event. We thought it would be the perfect timing because, like I said, we just I have a lot of people ask me the same thing. It's like,
Hmm.
why do you guys go to all these events? And I'm like, I'll be a student forever.
Yeah.
I will always be a student. I just love not just absorbing knowledge. I like to figure out how to do things better. And I
Hmm.
just want to keep an open mind in our market, or in our real estate industry. Things are always changing, but a lot of it's still the same. Some of it's still changing. I just want to make sure like I'm always in the room and I know when things are going to be happening and I can just learn from smarter people. So that's
Hmm.
the goal.
Yep.
So, well, hey, well, thank you everybody for joining us today on the show, and we hope you have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.